My name is Hannah Spicer and this is my basic halter training video. TQA is a nonprofit organization that works with experts in the equine and ranching industry to set industry quality standards for horse training. This is the TQA groundwork score sheet that will be used to score the horse throughout the process. On the left-hand side, the horse will be scored on task completion/foundation, and on the right, the horse will be scored on its temperament. Number 1 on the task completion/foundation side is good to catch. I scored the horse a +2. The definition of stockmanship is the ability to read flight zone and balance point in order to influence the speed and direction of an animal or an entire herd of animals. Before we even start the process of haltering a young horse, we first use stockmanship in order to get the horse to turn and face, in other words, stage 1, stopping the inside front foot and walking the other feet forward and around it. Once the horse has a solid stage 1, then we begin the haltering process. The first thing you do, once you can pet them, is then pet the lead rope over their neck. Then you take the end of the lead rope and put it on the off side of their head and slowly bring their head around so they're nice and soft before you halter them. The one thing you don't want to do is force the halter onto their head, because then they may be resentful for the rest of their life. Forcing the body can also cause them to permanently become hard to catch. Number 2 in the task completion/foundation column is stage 1 with willing submission, in a crisis, standing, walking, and trotting. The definition of stage 1 is stop the inside front foot and walk the other feet forward and around it. Also known as doubling or a one-rein stop, it acts as an emergency brake for the first few rides. The definition of willing submission is after initial cue, the horse performs the task on a loose rein with no leg pressure. For stage 1 with willing submission, the horse scored a +2. You can see after my initial cue, it took him only a couple of steps to complete a stage 1. Stage 1 in a crisis is when we tie them to the fence with the halter and lead rope and raise the energy of the flag to put them in a crisis. This teaches them to be soft to the halter and to not pull back when tied. Number 3 on the task completion foundation side is horizontal direction, standing, walking, and trotting. The definition of direction is when slack is taken out of the rein, the horse puts the slack back into the rein with suppleness through the poll and loin. There are several signs to identify correct direction by the poll and loin. First is breaking the poll horizontally, the hairline curves between the ears. The nose should be directly underneath the eye. You shouldn't see any white in the eye. The front and hind feet travel on the same path as the nose. The poll and loin should make a perfect C around rider's leg, and you should be able to ride a perfect circle. Having correct horizontal direction in the groundwork is going to set the foundation to lope nice even circles when under saddle. To get horizontal direction standing, you want to take a little bit of slack out of the rein and wait until the horse puts the slack back into the rein with suppleness through the poll. It's really important to just barely take the slack out of the rein and then wait for the horse to put the slack back into the rein. It's best to do it with as little pressure as possible so the horse stays sensitive. For horizontal direction, standing and walking, I scored the horse a +1. At this point, he had pretty low energy, so it was kind of difficult to get good horizontal direction. But he's still broken in the poll horizontally, and his inside hind is stepping up in between. Next on the score sheet is stage 2 with willing submission. The definition of stage 2 is hindquarters pulling the horse in a reverse motion. Getting stage 1 into stage 2 in the groundwork is going to set a good foundation for stopping and backing when under saddle. Again, willing submission is defined as after initial cue, the horse performs the task on a loose rein with no leg pressure. For stage 2 with willing submission, I scored the horse a +1. Ideally, I would have had a smoother transition of bringing back the rein as well as bringing up the flag in front of the face. As you can see, there's a little bit of a pause between the stage 1 maneuver and the cueing for stage 2, which is just a little bit less clear communication for the horse. The next task completion is stage 3 with willing submission. The definition of stage 3 is lateral movement of front and hind feet together. Having a good stage 1 into stage 3 on the ground is going to set the foundation for the horse to have a decent side pass, ability to open and close gates, and eventually make turns from their hindquarters and into a spin. Again, with willing submission, it's the horse's idea. For stage 3 with willing submission, I scored the horse a +1. Again, the same thing applies here. I think a smoother transition to Q from stage 1 into stage 3 would have made it a little smoother, but he did really well regardless. Here you can kind of tell on the temperament side he's getting a little bit dull and low energy because I had to bump him with the flag to get him to move in horizontal direction. To Q for stage 3, it works well to shake the flag next to them as well as blocking their eye with your arm. Next we have stage 4 with willing submission. The definition of stage 4 is stopping the inside hind foot and walking the other feet forward and around it. Stage 4 on the ground is going to set the horse up nicely for spins and rollbacks and such. With willing submission, it should be the horse's idea. For stage 4 with willing submission, I scored the horse a +2 because he did quite well with this. He stopped the inside hind foot and walked the other feet forward and around it. Unfortunately, temperament-wise, he was getting pretty low energy and pretty dull, mainly from the heat and just being a baby. But he was very willing to respond to my request, even with being dull and having lower energy, so that was really good. Our next task completion is lead with willing submission and respect. For lead with willing submission and respect, I gave him a +3. He was walking on a loose rein the majority of the time, and when I stopped, he stopped giving me plenty of space. The last task completion is to pick up feet. For pick up feet, I gave him a +2. He did quite well with this. Lastly, here's a look at the score sheet. You can see it started out with a lot of negatives and eventually led to more positives. He had a good amount of energy at first, but he didn't have a ton of self-preservation, which made him easier to work with at first, but he became a little bit dull and not very sensitive later on, especially since he was being worked pretty hard and it was pretty hot outside. But eventually he got pretty sensitive again, and he was always very willing. But you can definitely see that overall he started out a lot in the negatives and now is almost all positives. Thanks for watching.